We begin in West Africa, where the Ovie of Ewu-Robo Kingdom, Ugali South Local Government Area of Delta State, Southern Nigeria, Clement Ikolo Urukpe I, who voluntarily surrendered himself Thursday evening, has flown or been flown to Abuja. Now, he was escorted to the Asaba International Airport by both the commanding officer, 63 Brigade Nigerian Army Asaba, the Delta State Police Commissioner, and other senior military officers. He boarded Air Peace Airline and the plane departed Asaba Airport tarmac at about 9:10 a.m. to Abuja. The defense headquarters had declared 8 persons wanted in connection to the murder of 17 military personnel in Okwama, Ugali South Local Government Area of Delta State, including him. It was mixed feelings at the Kuriga community located in the Chikun Local Government Area of Kaduna State as villagers trooped out en masse to welcome their children who were kidnapped 3 weeks ago. The children, who spent 16 days in captivity, were abducted from the LEA Primary School Kuriga on March the 7th, but were later rescued by the military on Sunday the 24th in Zamfara State. Marvelous Obomanu reports.
Uneasy calm has returned to Kuriga community, located in Kaduna State, Nigeria's northwestern region. Villagers, including children, trooped out en masse to welcome their kidnapped children, now rescued by the military. For families of the kidnapped Kuriga school children, it has been a long wait, but finally, for many of them, there is relief at last.
The moment we've all been waiting for is here. The villagers are all in a celebrative mood, awaiting the return of their children who were abducted.
Some of the villagers who could not hide their excitement spoke exclusively to News Central TV.
Alhamdulillah, ina cikin farin ciki dangane da dawon wayannan ƴaƴanamu da gwamnati ta mana. Da farko muna so mu gode ma Allah subhanahu wataala, sannan na biyu muna so mu gode ma gwamnatin jihar Kaduna ceto mana yaranmu daga hannun yan fashin daji. Gaskiya kusan a cikin kwana 21 nan bacci ina tsammani inda ba barawo ba, gaskiya duk dare yadda na ga rana haka nake ganin dare saboda bakin cikin rashin ganin ƴaƴan guda.
Irin dadin ma irin wanda bai mutuwa nan ne, alhamdulillah mun ji dadi sosai, alhamdulillah. Kuma wannan gwamnati mun mata godiya, mun ma Allah godiya, domin Allah ya yaran da aka kwashe farkon kwasan an tasa su da yawa, ba su kasa irin 200 da wani abu nan zuwa kusan 300. Da haka tafi da su wasu suka dinga samun mafita suna da dawowa.
Ina cikin damuwa amma na yi farin ciki sosai saboda akwai babban ɗan shi a ciki. Na yi farin ciki kuma ina jin daɗi, kuma na jinjina ma gwamnatin jihar Kaduna da wannan ƙoƙari da ta yi na dawo mana da 'ya'yanmu da ƙannanmu da 'yan uwa ga baki ɗaya da ta yi. Ina jinjina mata. Shi kuma Abubakar Isa, Allah Ubangiji ya gafarta mishi, Allah Ubangiji ya karɓi shahadan shi.
Finally, these children have been reunited with their community. They are happy. Some of them are showing their emotions. Right now, they are being embraced by their community members.
Some of the kidnapped victims spoke of their experience in captivity.
Daga 12 na safe da muka fara tafiya ba muka isa Zamfara ba sai karfe 2 na dare muka isa Zamfara. Sai ba su ba mu da suke ba mu ke dafa mu na ci. Ni suka ba mu da safe dare, so bi suke ba mu a rana, sai kuma duka. In zaka je ma fitsari sai kai tsallan kwado sannan in ka dawo. Sai kai tsallan kwado ga duka. Duka ne ma ya kashe malamin mu. Mana Abubakar kan duka tun wajen zuwa suke dukan shi a fuska, ba masu dukan shi a jiki sai dai a fuska.
Na ji daɗi, ni ba abin da ban ji ba gaskiya, na ji daɗi, na ji farin ciki, kuma Allah saka mu wanda suka yi mana da alkhairi, mun gode.
Many residents of the community say they expect government to provide a safe haven for the children in the community to be able to continue with their education in a conducive and safe environment. In Kaduna for News Central, I am Marvelous Obomman.
Still talking security, gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have reportedly attacked a Celestial Church in Ogun State, abducting 2 worshippers. The incident occurred at the church located in Oriorin village, Mowe in Obafemi Owode local government area of Ogun State on Thursday. The State Police Public Relations Officer, Omolola Odutola, in a statement on Friday, said the perpetrators fled through a thick forest behind the church. In the meantime, the State Commissioner of Police, Alamutu Abiodun, has ordered immediate mobilization of security personnel to apprehend the perpetrators. State governments and other stakeholders in the distribution of food assistance to needy Nigerians have been tasked to handle the exercise better in order to prevent premature deaths. To this end, the National Emergency Management Agency has called for the involvement of community leaders and other relevant stakeholders to avert the unwarranted deaths and injuries during the distribution of palliatives. At least 8 persons reportedly died in a stampede in Bauchi, while 7 people reportedly died while struggling to buy cheap foreign parboiled rice from customs in Lagos. In Nasarawa, 2 students of the Nasarawa State University also died during food distribution. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by public affairs commentator Benga Ayonuga. Hello, Benga. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Good evening. All right. So you've heard the story. Now, how can the involvement of community leaders and other relevant stakeholders in collaboration with NEMA ensure orderly distribution and also avert the unwarranted deaths and injuries during the distribution of palliatives?
Well, I believe that involving community leaders is just one step. Like many of the CSOs that have been saying, we need first and foremost to find a way to ensure that Nigerians don't become paupers who depend solely on palliative to survive. And what are the underlying issues? One is the issue of insecurity that is making it impossible for farmers to get their product or be able to plant in the first place. If we can solve that, I think this issue will be reduced. But on the area of involving community leaders, I believe that community leaders know their people very well. Let me use my hometown, for example, as an example. I'm currently in my hometown for our annual Towns Festival. And upon getting home today, I heard that palliatives were distributed to all the aged people in my hometown. And how did they do it? Every community have Olorituns, that's like CDA chairman or leader from street to street. And they are the one who collated the names of the people who are supposed to be in the various cadre of beneficiary, those who are above 50, those who are above 70, those who are 30, you know, for the various cadre. The Olorituns know them. So because of the involvement of those community leaders, the distribution was seamless. It was made easy because all the information they needed to get that thing done have been made available beforehand. But even with the involvement of community leaders, I think one of the challenge that we are having that is leading to this stampede that we're having in the states like Bauchi, Nasarawa, and Lagos that you have used as an example is, one, some of our governments are not sharing informations with each other. A state like Borno State has been distributing palliative for almost a year now, and I don't think in any of the palliative distribution that Governor Zulum has been doing, we've had any issue of stampede or things like that. Why can't states collaborate with each other and say, guy, how are you doing or getting this thing right in your state? Let us share information and see how we can make things work more seamlessly.
All right, now talking about you know, seeing how things can work more seamlessly. Let's talk about, you know, those in charge of the distribution right now. That's the personnel in charge. What type of training should they be involved in, you know, when it comes to distribution of palliatives? You know, what should they be involved in when it comes to receiving, you know, and managing the large crowds effectively?
First and foremost, I believe that any government that wants to do any form of palliative distribution, your agents must have all their informations beforehand. The number of people per location, those who are expected to be there, all this, doing your preliminaries, investigation and data collection would really help to reduce. And I think that is one of the things that seems to be lacking because many of these palliative distribution, everybody just come, there is, and eventually they overwhelm those who are employed. And sometimes maybe they don't even have enough staff to cater for the number of people that are coming. So you are expecting 1,000 people to come and you want to distribute palliative to 1,000 people and you are only employing 20 or 30 staff to do that. It might overwhelm them, you know. So I believe that they need to get proper training in area of data collation, data cleanup, and also ensuring that they have all the information needed beforehand, then enough number of people so that once people are waiting too long in line before the palliative gets to them, that's when agitation begins to build up. And if you have enough personnel, it will also reduce this situation where one person wants to collect 2 times, 3 times, and it overwhelms the personnel at hand because they are not enough in the first place. That is what I can think of in terms of training and preparation of personnel. Then I believe that National Orientation Agency needs to do more in reorientating our society generally, because it is not just about palliative. We have seen wealthy people go to parties and they will pack food that they don't need. Wealthy people who can afford it, they will go to party, they'll pay the party servers and say, this table, make sure that everything continues to flow. When I'm going, I'll give you 5,000. And that is a psychological or mindset issue. And it is the work of the National Orientation Agency to help reshape this mindset. We see Japanese, when they go even to World Cup, they clean up the stadium they use, they clean up their restroom, despite the fact that many of them are millionaires. Why? Because of the mindset that they are coming with from their country. So I believe that the National Orientation Agency needs to do something around that part too.
All right, Benga, now still regarding the current protocols, you know, for crowd control and management during the distribution of the palliatives, you talked about data collation, which is actually, you know, at this point, we're actually talking about technology. Now, are there other technological solutions that can be implemented to streamline the distribution process and also prevent overcrowding?
Well, we can monetize some of this palliative, and once you have all the data, people don't even need to come out. You know, they will get their alerts wherever they are. A case in example, I think one senator from Ogun Central did something like that recently, Senator Olamilekan Adeola Yayi, where he gave 50,000 naira to all the attendants, and I think there are about thousands of attendants at the event where he gave palliative out. But everybody received their alert. Why? Because they have done their work of data collation beforehand. They know how many people are going to come to the event. They already have their account number. They already have all the things they need about them. So right there and then, without needing to struggle or run here, run there, they are getting their alert. So I believe that if some of these palliatives can be monetized, even though that is also flawed, especially when we have people who want to, take this money and not allow it to get to those who are in need of it. But with technology too, this can be traced, and anyone who wants to do a backdoor kind of thing can be brought to justice in time. So I believe that the people in government, the people in many of these organizations need to do more in researching to many of the technologies that are available, some of them for free, you know, that they can easily download and get to collect and populate their information there so that the job will be easier for them.
All right, Benga, now having these ideas is one thing, and, you know, being able to communicate, you know, these ideas effectively to the people is another thing. How can, you know, the communication process be improved to the public about the distribution process to prevent panic and confusion?
That is why I said they need to go and learn. Some people have done it successfully already. It is not something that people have given you example of the Governor Zulum of Borno State. I've given you example of Senator Yayi in Ogun West in Ogun State, and several other people. Even Lagos State government has done this thing successfully. Some local governments have done this thing successfully. Government needs to collaborate and share information with each other. People should not be too proud to ask their other counterparts in other states across the federation whom they have seen done something successfully and say, guy, you have done this thing successfully in your area. How can we copy the method you use? It's not about, they are not reinventing any wheel, they are not starting anything from scratch. They just need to ask from those who have done it successfully and retailor the method they use to fit their particular need in their various states, because of course what might be obtainable in Ogun State might be different from what might be obtainable
Benga,
in
even at that, we actually know how stubborn, members of the public can be, despite everything that you've said and, all the processes being taken and all that. Most times when they get to the event or where the distribution is actually taking place, all they're after is they want to go home with something. They don't want it to finish before it's their turn. They want their turn. And so, in most cases, what they've heard, the orientation that they were given goes out the window.
That is where orientation and reorientation needs to come in. You don't have to be tired of it. In this country about 10, 15 years ago, hardly will you see anybody on the street using their seat belt. But for some 5 years before the road safety stopped, they were doing constant campaign about the importance of using seat belt. And because that message caught on, the message may not catch on immediately, but eventually the message will catch on, and people will begin to do right. Our National Orientation Agency needs to begin to think out of the box. They see things that are happening in the society. They need to begin out. When last, as National Orientation Agency, brought an advert to your own station or to any station that you know, talking about some of these issues in educating the society? I believe that is one of their job. They are not even doing anything. Nigerians are not that stubborn. If you keep harping this message in their ears from time to time, people will change, people will learn. If you give them example,
all right, Benga. Now, even in the presence or absence of orientation or reorientation, considering the fact that we know that as of the moment, stampedes and deaths are becoming a major concern, especially during these palliative distributions. Many people are of the opinion that measures should be in place to quickly respond to emergencies that may arise, which doesn't seem to be the case. Well, thank you so much, Benga, for joining me and also speaking on this. Now, as part of its Ramadan feed-in program, the Kebbi State government has finalized plans to distribute food staples at designated mosques approved by Governor Nasir Idris. While fielding questions from reporters in his office in Birnin Kebbi, the state capital, the Commissioner for Religious Affairs, Muhammad Aliyu, said Governor Idris had offered bags of grains to the committees for distribution to the public. According to him, 9 mosques were reserved in each of the 20 local government areas of their packages, or for their packages in the first 10 days, another 3 mosques in the second 10 days, and 3 mosques in the last 10 days of Ramadan. As the Tripartite Committee on New National Minimum Wage concludes its public hearing in the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria, the federal government is considering sanctioning states that are reluctant to implement the new minimum wage. The sanction was part of the recommendations by the stakeholders who attended the public hearing. Although the recommended sanctions remain sketchy, it was gathered that those states may not benefit from federal government grants. It is expected that the old minimum wage of 30,000 naira per month will cease to be effective on March 31st for a new rate to take effect, which President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may announce on May 1st, 2024. Over 15 states have not been paying the current 30,000 naira minimum wage implemented since 2019. Earlier, business and social policy analyst Kenneth Ikenwa joined to speak more on this.
Even in 2024, particularly my state, Delta and Bayelsa, because these are 2 oil-producing states, and these are states that also earn from 13% derivation And one would have expected that they should be able to pay the minimum wage of 30,000. It's quite disappointing. But we look at the issues and look at the law. I do not know how the federal government will go about sanctioning these states. I think the best that the federal government could do is to maybe use the carrot and stick approach. And the other thing that the federal government could also do is to withdraw the collateral signatory for some of these subnationals, by that I mean states, especially when they go outside the shores of Nigeria to look for loans, to look for aid, to actually shore up their budgets and implement the projects that they want to do or want to execute in their states. So
Operatives of the Lagos State Environmental Sanitation Corps have arrested 63 individuals across various locations for crossing the highway without using the pedestrian bridges and for engaging in street trading. The State Commissioner for the Environment and Water Resources, Tokumbo Wahab, made this known in a post on his X handle on Friday. He said the defaulters have been charged to court for prosecution in line with the Lagos State Environmental Sanitation Protection Law 2017. In February, the Lagos State government urged residents to make use of pedestrian bridges as it described the crossing of major highways in the state by pedestrians as an offense, adding that any defaulter caught will be prosecuted. Now to a bit of business, all banks in Nigeria have been given a directive to recapitalize within the next 24 months and should present an implementation plan of how it will achieve this to the Central Bank of Nigeria before April 30th. A statement signed by the Director, Financial Policy and Regulations Department of the Apex Bank, Haruna Mustafa, disclosed the minimum capital base for a commercial bank with international authorization will now be 500 billion naira. For commercial banks with national authorization, the capital base will be 200 billion naira, while regional banks are expected to build their capital base to 50 billion naira. CBN also pegged the new capital base for merchant banks at 50 billion naira, while non-interest banks with national authorization should improve to 20 billion naira capital base. Those with regional authorization should have a minimum of 10 billion naira capital base. Earlier, Head Capital Market Interstate Securities, Vincent Oshoma, was on the news and shared his thoughts.
Their current position with respect to their capital base and also the expected increase in new minimum, and look at the various options they have to be able to meet those, meet the new minimum capital base. For the big banks, I think, I don't think it will be very difficult for them to raise money. I don't think the options of measures will not be, except for acquisition. The small banks will be looking at merging and also being acquired by the big banks. Because at the end of this exercise, what will definitely play out is that we have smaller number of banks in the system, just like we had in the last recapitalization, where there was a shrinking in the number of banks from about 89 to about 25 at the end of the day. So we expect to see a reduction in number of banks. So I think they have to look at the various options. Also, in looking at taking the option of measures, they have to look at companies, corporates that have similar ideas, similar goals with them, for them to be able to measure otherwise there will be issues at the end of the day. So I think they have to look at their current position and their operation, their goal in looking at the various options that are available.
Nigeria telecoms markets is one of Africa's largest and fastest growing markets. While the sector has improved in leaps and bounds, there are still many areas to be improved upon, such as in the area of broadband penetration. In this report, News Central's Bettina Angweli takes a look at how the sector has fared in the first quarter of 2024.
On March 14, 2024, Nigeria woke up to restricted internet access. The disruption, which also affected several other countries, was said to have resulted from a cut on the submarine cable system offshore the coast of West Africa. The magnitude and cost implications of the service disruption threw up the need for Nigeria to seek and invest in alternative solutions to prevent a repeat incident.
We've become very virtual. We've been very internet reliant in all of our activities across board, and that has really, really affected lives. I do not think we should at this point give in to this conspiracy theory. And it affects life in no small measure. Banks, financial transactions, business transactions, e-commerce, and all the e-commerce activities across the West African sub-region.
Telecoms equipment is mostly imported into the country, and the recent downward spiral of the naira against the dollar has seen the cost of many infrastructural projects in the spike. This has impacted the rollout of 5G services, which requires massive investments in infrastructure to make the service go around the country and to provide quality service. But how much has the emergence of 5G network improved connectivity?
We have experiences where the people will go and put the fiber and hide by the bush. When the operators go for repair, they kidnap them, they hold them and rob them of their valuables. Things like that, there are, in the south in particular, there are places like in River State where they will call MTN, please, I am in your manhole so-so location. Come and meet me or I'm going to cut the fiber. And you have to go and settle them.
In the area of security, telecommunication has to a large extent been used by nefarious elements to perpetrate various crimes such as kidnappings, banditry, terrorism, and the National Identity Number, NIN, was supposed to help check this. According to the National Identification Management Commission, NIMC, the NIN would help sync all records about a person in the database and prevent both double identity and identity fraud. The question now is, why is insecurity still the order of the day, with millions of Nigerians already registered with their NIN?
Those umbrella people that have been engaged by the mobile network operators that you see outside, they do not do their SIM registration with due diligence. Some of them, the moment they say, sorry, what is your mother's maiden name? Because it's one of the questions. Or what local government do you come from? Ah, which one? I don't know. I only know my state. I don't know the name. And then they will go on because they want the numbers. They will now go on to register them, despite that they did not give complete information.
There is no gainsaying that the telecom sector has impacted on the Nigerian economy in several positive ways. However, there is a consensus that more ground still need to be covered to attain the desired results. And with more investments in the telecom sector, this desired result will be achieved sooner than later. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Unwili.
Thank you, Bettina, for that report. Now, women's rights advocates in Nigeria have called on the federal government to consider the lack of access to menstrual health management products for women and young girls of reproductive age as a national emergency. They say the inability of women to access sanitary wares on time makes it difficult for them to realize their potential, thus the need for urgent attention to address the issue. Idong Joseph reports.
The lack of access to menstrual hygiene products can lead to missed opportunities in education and impacting negatively on the health of women and girls. In Nigeria, like many other developing countries, period poverty has remained a burden to over 30% of women of menstrual age, as the cost of hygiene products has continued to be on the rise.
The pervasive issue of period poverty in Nigeria affects over 37 million girls and women, which is approximately 38% of menstruating women and girls who cannot afford essential menstrual hygiene products. Despite the gravity of this situation, this crisis remains largely unaddressed and normalized within the Nigerian society.
If a girl child is not adequately informed and doesn't have access to clean hygiene materials that she needs for her period, it might in turn affect her mental health.
In a bid to find lasting solutions to this, several women-led non-governmental organizations in Nigeria have launched a solution-driven initiative to support women and girls, including helping create awareness over the issue.
with almost 83 million Nigerians living below the poverty line. Parents would rather use their money for food and sustenance rather than sanitary products. The Buy Me a Pad project aims to address period poverty by providing free and affordable menstrual hygiene products to those in need.
As access to menstrual health and hygiene management products is a basic necessity for women and young girls of reproductive age, women rights advocates are calling on governments to consider period poverty as an emergency.
If you look at the cost implication, if we don't do this now, it will cost us as a country much more in the nearer future.
Politicians to ensure that they put in resources where it will really have meaning and touch the life and well-being of the citizens.
They called on all stakeholders to join hands to end period poverty in Nigeria and to create a future where every woman and girl can manage her period with dignity and without barriers. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonk Joseph.
The news continues in West Africa, where economists are calling for an adequate debt restructuring plan to prevent insolvency and also create alternatives to external loan support programs on debt sustainability. They made this call at the ongoing International Conference on Africa Debt Crisis, which seeks to address the current debt problem in the continent and exploitation of its resources in exchange for bad debts. News Central's Adeshawa Odushoga reports.
It's the second day of the International Conference on Africa Debt Crisis and International Financial Architecture holding in Accra, Ghana. The areas of discourse focuses on three major subtopics, which includes African debt default and restructuring in Asia and Latin America, debt, gender and social policy, and conversations around how Ghana arrived at its current debt crisis and how to get out of it. Speakers here are emphasizing on the continuous debt that Africa has accrued over the years, primarily due to the rise in interest rate, often higher than its economic growth rate and fluctuating exchange rate within its grace period.
There are, of course, differences between countries in terms of their level of development, in terms of their structure, etc. But they seem to somehow be sort of caught in the similar trap. So it's to try and look at the experiences of these particular countries and why, despite the differences between them, they are in a context in which they are faced with the same kind of both debt and development crisis. And therefore, what should be the common elements of any resolution strategy?
Credit rating agencies have also been urged to be objective and promote inclusivity with its rating information and modalities, especially as it concerns African countries. Highlighting measures to avoid a further escalation of its debt crisis, Africa is advised to build an industrialized economy, form a more unified economic bloc, as well as build an indigenous capacity within the continent.
A lot of African countries depend on commodities. In Nigeria, it's oil. In Zambia, for instance, it's copper. In Ghana, where we are, it's cocoa, gold. And these commodities, their prices are volatile, unpredictable, and internationally determined, right? So for us to have better predictability and resilience in our debt management policies, it's important that we industrialize. So rather than export commodities.
One of the main things to learn about is how to deal with bulters, which are these holdouts who opt out of the restructuring and try to really introduce as many clauses and as many lessons possible from previous restructurings. We even had a ship which was captured here in Ghana just because of the vultures' actions. Vultures are litigating funds which buy on the secondary buy debt of the sovereign debt of the countries on secondary markets in order to litigate.
Issues around tax mobilization and debt restructuring were also brought to the fore. Speakers also emphasized the need to increase internal revenue to finance infrastructure projects, spelling out loan objectives and non-reliance on foreign debts. In Accra, Ghana, for News Central, Adeshawa Odushoga.
Now in East Africa, Madagascar's High Constitutional Court has announced that the Speaker of Parliament a former supporter of President Andry Rajoelina turned government critic, has been stripped of her post. The court decision to remove Christine Razanamahosa from the National Assembly cited a flagrant violation of her party's line of conduct and her role as Speaker. Now, just before the first round of presidential election last November, Razanamahosa, who had turned into a leading opposition figure, called for the polls to be suspended. She was the Justice Minister before being appointed Speaker of the Assembly for a few months in 2014. That's the first woman to hold the position. She was re-elected Speaker in 2019. Now, the slow-moving cyclone that unexpectedly turned towards Madagascar has killed 18 people, washing away homes and displacing thousands. High winds ripped down trees and torrents of water gushed through villages after the cyclone, which was initially projected to skim the Indian Ocean island, changed course and made landfall in the north on Wednesday. Now, according to statistics released on Friday by the National Risk and Disaster Management Office, more than 20,000 people have been displaced and over 5,000 households affected. Some victims had drowned while others were killed by collapsing houses or fallen trees. A previous death toll had stood at 11. Now let's look at South Africa, where the former president, Jacob Zuma, has survived an accident or a car accident after a vehicle transporting him was hit by a drunk driver overnight. The incident happened just hours after electoral officials barred Zuma from standing in the May 29th general election, further stoking tensions in the run-up to the polls. According to the police, the 51-year-old was arrested in KwaZulu-Natal province for drunk driving, as well as on a charge of reckless and negligent driving. Zuma and his bodyguards escaped uninjured, and the 81-year-old was taken to his place of residence. Christians across the world are marking the beginning of Easter with the celebration of Good Friday, a day dedicated to commemorating the death of Jesus Christ. In Johannesburg, the Cathedral of Christ the King celebrated Good Friday with a procession across the city, reflecting on the crucifixion and death of Jesus. News Central's Bongani Siziba gives us the story.
In the heart of Hillbrow at the Cathedral of Christ the King, Christians marked the beginning of Good Friday with a drama portraying the trial to crucifixion of Jesus, reenacting the painful journey that Jesus undertook.
Look, I've punished him. Isn't this enough? If you let this man go, Your Excellency, we'll have to testify against you to King Caesar.
This was followed by a procession marched through the streets of Hillbrow, dramatizing scenes on his way to Calvary, all donned in their costumes, a reminder to the world of the suffering and sacrifice Jesus endured.
3 days when Jesus had the Last Supper, remember after Last Supper, then he goes and gets crucified, then rise again. So everything within Christianity revolves within Easter. So it is sort of like the backbone of Christianity. That is why it's so important to use it, to utilize and show people that our Christianity, believing in Christ, is started from this point.
The procession continued with harmonies being echoed through the streets, with onlookers watching in silence, others visibly moved by the sight. The dramatization continued with a man portraying Jesus carrying a cross, his body beaten and bruised, mocked by Roman soldiers. They portrayed the brutality and cruelty of the scene, emphasizing the physical and emotional toll that Jesus went through, while his mother Mary wept and pleaded for mercy as her son bore the weight of the cross.
I don't know what I was thinking by allowing myself to choose the role, but then while I was playing it, I actually felt a sense of cleansing, because I do know that I make mistakes and I sin. So I felt in character when playing the role. I put myself in that situation. I put myself in the situation of I need to clean myself. I need to repent for the sins that I've made, and I now understand as to what the story of Jesus is about.
For these faithful believers, this procession is not just a ritual, but a sacred journey reenacting the final steps of Jesus Christ before his crucifixion.
And then today, with the procession, just trying to go through what Jesus went through when he went up the mountain of Golgotha, carrying his cross, the challenges that he faced carrying that cross, the burdens that we face day to day, and him being strong to carry that cross.
When they crucified Jesus in the cross, it touched me a lot, how he died the painful death because of me.
For Christians, the story of Jesus' crucifixion is a poignant and a display of faith and devotion, a powerful reminder of the love and sacrifice of Jesus.
As the faithful mark the start of Easter, wishing you all a blessed Easter season.
Happy Easter to everyone.
Happy Easter to everyone. Happy Easter. I love you too.
Johannesburg for News Central, Bongani Siziba.
And now let's take a look at sports, where Sporting Lagos head coach Paul Ofor has publicly apologized to the club's fans following their elimination from the Lagos State Federation Cup. In their inaugural encounter in Lagos Derby, Inter Lagos triumphed over Sporting Lagos with a 2-0 victory at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena, Onikon. Now, Tony Obia played a pivotal role for the NNL side, contributing a goal and an assist for Abubakar Tahir, securing their lead before halftime and securing a spot in the final against champions Ikorodu City FC, who defeated First Bank 3-0 in the other semi-final match. Ofor expressed his remorse, stating that Sporting Lagos fans deserve better. The noisy Lagosians, who will now redirect their focus to the midweek NPFL clash with Lobby Stars, scheduled to take place in Lagos. Ghana midfielder Mohamed Kudus could return to action for West Ham in their English Premier League game against Newcastle United. The West Ham star pulled out of Ghana's friendlies against Nigeria and Uganda in March's international break due to injury. Now, still talking sports, Manchester City have dealt a double injury blow as Kyle Walker and John Stones will miss Sunday's crucial clash in the Premier League title against Arsenal. Both players were injured on international duty with England. Walker was replaced early during a 1-0 defeat to Brazil with a hamstring problem, while Stones limped off in Tuesday's 2-2 draw with Belgium due to an adductor issue. Defending champion City are third in the Premier League, but just 1 point behind leaders Arsenal, who are ahead of Liverpool, only a goal difference. Now, the absence of the key defensive duo is also a worry for City, with the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final away to Real Madrid on April 9th. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. We told you that Ewu Monarch on Army wanted list over Okwama killings in Delta State has been flown to Abuja. We also told you that Cyclone Gemani death toll has risen to 18 in Madagascar. Finally, you heard that former South Africa President Jacob Zuma has survived a car crash. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do you follow us on social media? We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.